all my best ruckers, they're like, you know what we don't do? We don't ruck. And so my best ruckers were avoiding it like the plague, but I'm doing different things to keep them ruck ready year round, of like the safety bar walks, the chains, the sleds. I do think everybody needs bodybuild, but that's just because bodybuilding is strength training and injury prevention. When you look at all good athletes who are injury free or limited injuries or playing around injuries, it's bodybuilding.
Time to sit down, keep it real, and cut the bullshit. Welcome to Table Talk. All right, guys, we're back with another episode of Table Talk. Today, our guest is Jordan Betz. He's got over a decade in the strength and conditioning world, working with Division I athletes and focusing now on special ops, the founder of Downrange Strength and the creator of the world's strongest operator. Did I leave anything out there? And there's a master's degree. There's other stuff.
Yeah, I'm good looking from angles, standing lighting. Yeah, but
we'll let the audience decide that one.
Masters,
yeah.
A little bit.
All right, before we get going, I got a gift that we give people that come on the podcast.
Awesome.
So pop that open real quick.
Sure.
There's a Table Talk t-shirt in there, which y'all can get on the website. And then the notebook, I have those made from the same supplier that makes our P2 powerlifting belts. And then the challenge coin is something that's not a challenge coin. It's like a reward. It's an acknowledgement coin, something I've been giving out to people for the past decade. So I give those to the people that embody the aim of elitefts, which is to live, learn, and pass on. So not everybody gets those. So you're getting those because you do that. And we need more people like that in the industry. There's element packs and stickers and other fun stuff in there as well. Dave Tate here from elitefts to talk to you about bands. We've been a supplier of bands for almost 2 decades now. So I've known my way around the band landscape. When I'm talking about bands, I'm talking about floss bands, long bands, short bands, bands you can use for resistance training, mobility training, body weight training, and flossing. One of our most popular bands, or actually our most popular bands, are the long bands. The long bands are typically used the most with squats, bench presses. Our floss bands are bands that you wrap around the joint to be able to help with mobility, circulation. And the short bands are designed for shorter range movements, bench press, deadlifts, and a lot of times people will use them with resistance machines to help accommodate the strength resistance curve. Head over to elitefts.com and look for bands in the toolbar or blowout menu.
Man, I appreciate it. It means a lot. Thank you very much.
Where I want to jump off with is, how did you get into this industry? So let's go way back.
Okay, so there was never anything else planned. As soon as I started lifting and the first muscle and fitness I opened, it was just kind of like, how do I do this and stay in this realm?
When? Like what age?
14.
Okay.
14 was first muscle and fitness, Flex magazine, muscular development. And so it was kind of like I never had anything on my brain except lifting from the day that I knew you could read about lifting.
Mm-hmm.
Cause I never really was interested in anything else as far as like academically. Like there was like, I was always, to blow the part where we talked about masters in college, I never bought a textbook once. The only textbook I ever bought in college was the CSCS textbook. That was literally the only book I ever bought, because everything was all in on, all my time was going to be spent trying to get stronger, trying to learn more about getting stronger, getting people stronger. And so when I started lifting, I started lifting as soon as I saw a barbell. My parents and my grandparents, there was always like the living room sets and basement sets. And so I started, as soon as I saw those, I was like, I should probably lift these things. And I would do I would just load up. My parents were like, you can't lift if we're not around. And so as soon as they would leave, I would load up the bar as heavy as I could on bench. and it was funny because we had
a teenager, right?
Yeah. It was and I was like, God, you should have known better. But then, and I would load up as heavy as I could on deadlift and just lift whatever fit on the bar with the worst form ever. And like both were just god awful. And I would just do that every day as soon as they leave, and never got hurt. But like, what was funny too was like looking back, I'd show my buddies, like we had the little Nokia bricks, and we all like were kind of doing the same thing, because like once you meet a meathead, it's like just like that. So like I would show them videos of me almost dying, like maxing out on bench, clips on. Like one side down, one side up, and you see me doing the JV bounce with the leg, like, and they're, oh yeah, dude, you almost died there. And like, so that was my like program when I started. And then my grandpa, my mom's dad, he was like very studious with his training. He had an academic background, which like I got none of. He was all into schooling, and so he would get up, watch all the Weeder videos, and like do like textbook work before his lifts and treat it like science. And so one day he was we were at the commercial gym close to my house, and I like my style of lifting was just load whatever and lift it. And I was like showing him a bent over row, and I was like, hey, check this out. It was like first triple digit bent over row. And he's like so disgusted. He's like, when are you gonna start training? And walks away. And I was like, oh damn, like there's something to this. Like I know I'm not doing it right, but I'm like, there's more. I didn't take it like, I think a lot of kids would like nowadays would misconstrue that comment. And I took it as like, okay, like let's expand this. And then so I started like, that's when he started giving me some stuff to read and to watch. Started diving in on like Ronnie Coleman videos, Branch Warren videos, Johnny Jackson videos, all the muscle and fitness, flex, muscular development. Him and my parents like got me subscription. All they're like, damn, this kid can read. Like, let's kind of go with this. And then, yeah, it was the same. Like my dad was always, my parents were kind of funny because they always pushed on, they're not meatheads, but they always pushed on training for sport. Like the only rules I had growing up was you have to play athletics year round and you can't quit. And so I was gymnastics, soccer, everything. They wouldn't let me play football. And like you had to play everything, but it's just you're going to learn how to endure stuff and learn, guess, like business decisions along the way, or how business works. Because my dad was big on that. Like, you're going to play these sports, you're not going to be very good at. You're going to get what you deem fucked over, and you're going to do it. And then we're going to talk at the end of the season about if that sport's right for you. And then so finally, like I was able to play football. My mom's rule on that was you have to train neck if you're going to play football. And so it's kind of funny because my mom is like way further than most strength coaches nowadays, where she could figure that out, and a lot of people have not. And then the rest was history from there. So back to point on the strength coach part. As I learned this stuff, and like I was like the meathead Matilda. My mom would take me to the bookstore and we'd get like Bigger, Stronger, Faster, or which one? Bigger, Faster, Stronger, not the Mark Bell. And then like the old Mike Gentry books, the old Nebraska books, and all that stuff. And that was like my birthdays and Christmas was, I just wanted those videos and those books. And so that was kind of where that started. And then as I learned more and more about that, I was really deep in the weeds of like programming at a young age, where my first job was at GNC, and I would always make sure I was the person who was opening the boxes, because that's where our commissions were. And the store, like they only care about the multivitamin sales and stuff. And I saw like what the employee commissions were. So I was like, okay, that's how I'm going to base what I sell. Cause I was 16. And so they just let me work there because they're like, we've seen you forever. Like, I'm not even old enough to, like, I'm not 18 yet. And so I was like, okay, Physogen is this and Muscle Tech is this. So if I can get these kids to buy like the Nitrotech, the Cell Tech, and this, I'll write them a program, and then they can return back, and I'll write them like a little 4-week bench block. And then Physogen had like the best commission on it. So I was like, okay, if they get like the M1 ball, the on cycle, the off cycle, like we can do that. And so that was what I did for fun, was like write programs and go lift every chance I could. And I kind of outgrew the commercial gym really quick. And my dad, he picked me up from school one day. I thought I was going to get yelled at. And because that's usually how that went. Like if I'm getting picked up by like, I'm like, oh God. And it's probably correct. And he like, hey, we're going to go check out this place. He saw in the newspaper there was this powerlifting, strongman, bodybuilding gym. It's called Rip Fitness. And he's like, we're going to go check it out, which was like extremely scary for me because like I was like, damn, like shit's real now. Like I'm going to start going around places I only see in magazines. And so he like went there, we did the tour, and then he was just like, hey, see ya. Like, you're training here today. And that was kind of the end of that. And so I started training there, and then then the funny part was I have a best friend I grew up with. Like, this dude was like, it's like him and Jesus, like as far as how they lived, like we were complete opposites. And I picked him up as soon as I found this place. He was like my training partner. We had nothing in common. He's still one of my best friends in the world. And I like the next day I take him from school and I make him miss the first class he's ever missed. I pull him out of class and I'm like, hey dude, we're going to this gym. He's like, I can't skip. I was like, fuck that. Like, you got to see this place. He signs up on the spot. And so we just go train every day. And there was so much new stuff. We didn't know what the hell we were doing. And there's chains, there's bands, there's strongman equipment and stuff. And so we like would just go and burn it down and we were doing a version of what we were doing. It was like bastardized prepubescent conjugate was like what we were doing. And the owner comes up one day because I think he had just seen us consistent enough there. Like if the gym was closed, we were there outside of it. Like we never missed a beat. And he comes up and he's like, he saw how we were hooking up the chains, and and most coaches need to listen to this, but like you have the feeder, you even it out, you have both sides doubled up. And we were hooking it up like through the collar where it's a one strand. Mm-hmm. Coaches listen to that part twice. And so he saw how we were hooking up and he was like, do you guys really want to learn how to do this shit? And I'm like, yeah, like, absolutely. And so he was like, show up Saturday at 8 a.m. And me and him were like looking at each other like fist bump, like, dude, we made it. And so that was a big conjugate crew. And like just by stroke of luck, they had a lot of that. Utah powerlifting scene was and still is like, it was a really cool environment to be close to, especially as a young lifter. And so they did the max effort bench on Saturdays, and we just rolled into that. And then we really saw how like team crew training worked by accident, just by him inviting us. And then he threw us in the loop on that. So we trained with all the older dudes. I mean, most of them were like, they're closer to depends than drinking age. And so we were the youngest by far on that. And they just threw us in and treated us like family right away.
Going back before that, because when you start with muscle and fitness and stuff like that, it's bro splits, right? And it sounds like from what you were saying there, you were doing what I would call more sport training oriented even before that point. So what was the catalyst from that? Because everything that you would have been reading would have been bro split, except maybe one article in the very end that might have been about powerlifting or strongman.
So the big thing was, it was like bro split, it was like bodybuilding, and which I think a lot of people need to start that way. I think everybody needs to start that way, because I started out the bro split in the Arnold Encyclopedia, where like I'm doing the 3 hour. I feel like if you have a young lifter and like younger family members on like my wife's side, I buy them the Arnold Encyclopedia, and I'm like, don't ask me a question, do this, go lift for 3 hours a day, figure out each body part, and then come back to me. But you need to do this part and just learn how to train the individual muscle groups. And so it was bro splitty, but like the thing about muscle and fitness was like, that was also kind of like where I was like, hey, this strength and conditioning thing, because they had, I remember vividly, like one of them was like Triple H's training, and then Vernon Davis trained very like conjugate in that article. Like he had like the max effort upper day, the dynamic effort, like he's doing dynamic effort with chains on incline. And I was really interested in like his style of training. And then obviously like you read about him, and every year his 40-yard dash was quicker as his body weight was going up. And then he goes to the combine, he runs a 4.38, 44-inch vertical. And like when you see the dudes, like, holy shit. And so in my mind, like I'd crossed off the bodybuilding side, but then I started like stumbling on accidentally to the athletic side, but it wasn't completely like sport specific to a fault. And so I accidentally just found like kind of the right material. And then
did you have to train with your high school strength coach or football coach dash strength coach?
ish, because like I don't even know, like I've seen a couple coaches in Utah, the high school setting, like it just now is kind of coming along at that facet. Our high school, we had the coach in the corner drinking tea who just was like, no, but yes. And all the dudes who, that's how a lot of us got in the weight room, was we realized if we trained on our own, we were going to get strong. And all the dudes who were doing the team training were, double digit dumbbell dorks. Like they were like, they weren't pushing the weight we were. So we learned really quick, like you have to train hard, and like this, because the splits were so fucking stupid. Like you're going to I'm going to get like, because your shoulders start to make sense sometimes, like with some of this younger training. And it was like, every day it was like a bastardized, bigger, faster, stronger. Cause like, that's when I started reading the books too. Like we're doing everything bigger, faster, stronger. And it's like bastardized versions of the cards. And I'm reading the books. And I'm like, we're not even doing this shit. And Greg Shepard's down the road. And like, what the fuck are we doing? And so like, it was kind of tough because like, I think as a younger lifter, you shouldn't have that many opinions, but when there's harm's way involved, and I always assume like they were doing the best with what they could, because it's a dude just sitting in the corner drinking tea who's not getting paid. Yeah. And so we would candy ass the lifts and then go do our own shit. And that was like something we learned, because a lot of, me and my friends, we all went on, who I ran with, like we all went on and played college ball, and like you'd be surprised at some of the programs, like some of the dudes were having to do that who had that lifting background. Like I know a lot of guys who went to play at like really good schools, and the training was kind of a downgrade, and they were getting weaker, slower. And so they had to learn how to like, am I going to candy ass and then make up for it in the afternoons? And some schools you really can't do that, because like you have 5 coaches watching you, the effort. Or some of them learned, I really got to make up for it in the discretionary time. So like after bowl game season, I'm going to use that time to get really strong, because I'm about to lose it in the spring. And then during May, I'm going to get strong. It was kind of a weird dynamic, but I think training's changed a little bit since then. Is
that how you had to balance it?
In college?
In college.
I didn't have a strength coach because I played small ball. So I was at, Yox would kick my ass if I didn't mention, it was East Texas State University, then Texas A&M Commerce, and then last year it changed to East Texas A&M. So I played at Texas A&M Commerce, which is now East Texas A&M. We didn't have a strength coach until my junior season, which was kind of like to the credit, like our coaches who were running the workouts, the position coaches, it wasn't terrible because they had good relationships with their college coaches. So we were getting a little runoff from some of the stuff they were doing. And I played for Coach Guy Morris, was my first coach there, who kind of a funny chain of events on that if it comes up. So Guy Morris was at Kentucky. One of my best friends played for him at Kentucky, because being a weight room guy, my friends were always older than me. Like my best friends were all like at least a decade older than me. And that Keith Shatlin, and one of his strength coaches was Jim Wendler in Kentucky. Mm-hmm. It's like full circle down the line whenever that comes up. That's how I stumbled upon Elite FTS when I was 17 years old, was from Keith Shatlin telling me some funny stories about his strength coach. He's like, I wonder what this dude's doing. And he's like, oh, cool. Like, oh, whatever. Here's the link. Like, I don't know what he's doing. Read what he's doing. And then it's like, okay, here we are.
Between training and football, which was your biggest passion during those times?
Oh, training from day one, because I wasn't shit at football from day one. And so training, no doubt, because everything in my life has came from training. And so there was like never like football, like I obviously loved it. But I knew like some people touch a football and they know that's them. John Elway, when he held a football, like I don't think he ever thought about anything else. For me, it was like first weight I touched, first textbook I opened, first competition I did. Those were my like, okay, I belong here. I never had that with football. I loved football, but I wasn't meant for football as far as like, I was like sophomore year of high school, I was 195 offensive lineman. Like I was the most unathletic, small, slow, like I was like athletically Michael J. Fox with a Rubik's Cube. But as I lifted and got stronger, then shit started like peeling around. Like I remember after like my first wave of lifting, I sat back on a punch and actually like launched a dude, and I'd never done that before, and I was like, holy shit, like there's something to this lifting thing. That was kind of my like aha moment. And that was like straight bro split lifting, but just getting stronger was kind of making me, and I say this so lightly, making me a better athlete. Like I still, everything I did in football was just off of making myself be there, because I knew like from day one that like I don't belong here as far as like frame wise, and like when you see, because like you guys have seen like actual NFL offensive linemen, like it's like fuck, like big motherfuckers. I was never that off strength, size, speed, power. Weight training made me that. So I always knew from day one I owe this all to training. And it was funny because like a lot of like my really big, like lack of a better word, harsh moments of like I'm gonna like take this training shit serious was in 8th grade. We like everywhere I played in high school, we were the biggest high school in the state, and like our little league tryouts were like fucking insane. There was like 5 teams, like it was like hardcore cuts, and I was always on what was called the A team, the best team, and it was just by wanting to be there. Like I wasn't that good, but my 8th grade coach, he pulls me aside after the tryouts and he's like, you're only here because I like you, and you don't belong here, and you just know you got here because I like you. And he like told me in a way of like, step shit up. And I took that, I thought very highly of him. Like I had some really good little league coaches, and I took that very like, I was like, I should take this serious and start getting bigger, faster, stronger. Because I never wanted that feeling of like being here because somebody liked you. I wanted to make sure like I earned the seat at the table after that. So that was like a really like, I didn't go home and like throw darts at the wall and shit. I just kind of took it as the feedback it was, and I wasn't all fucking daddy issue about it. Like a lot of people, like they take coaching and they think it's like a personal vendetta, when usually you're hearing the hardest shit. It's the most care. And that's exactly how I took it. I was like, hey, like this dude's a family friend. He's looking out for me. I should probably take this serious. And what was kind of funny about that was like, I was the slowest, smallest, like least talented athlete on that team. But of our offensive line, I was the only one from that offensive line that went on and played in college. So it was kind of a cool moment to look back on, because it was taking really hard feedback and applying it without emotion.
With being in that football environment as someone who really fell in love with the training aspect of it, did you find yourself ever conflicted where you felt like, although the football was kind of an endeavor that you enjoyed, that at some point maybe that flipped and it was kind of, you loved the training more than the football, and you felt maybe the football was holding the training back?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So how did you manage that relationship? Because obviously you played at a reasonable level and that went on for, so in your head, how did you continue to juggle that relationship and almost justify not just going, oh, fuck this, I just want to be in the gym and lift?
Poorly, very poorly. And I think the thing is like, so to answer your question, fucking bad. Mm-hmm. It was really tough because like football, if you're a meathead and football gets in the way, like as soon as that camp starts, you see all the numbers on the board, you're like, fuck, we worked hard for this bench press, and you're like, damn it. And that's where like Keith Shatlin was like a really good person to be around, because he was the guy I mentioned earlier, and me and him, it was so funny because he was actually the O-line coach for the rival high school. And me and him hit it off making fun of somebody at a powerlifting competition. We were making fun of the same person. We're like, dude, yeah, you get it. This dude's a dork. And so I had a way better relationship with him than my O-line coach was a dickhead. And I don't say that as like a coach basher. I say that because my O-line coaches in college were Guy Morris and Matt Storm, who were like fucking awesome. And this dude, like, not to say you're a coach bash ever, but I would have much rather transferred and played for Keith Shatlin because I saw what he was doing with his dudes, and I would train with him. I was getting more out of handwork and footwork with him, and he was a huge help athletically and strength training. And he worked for under Tom Shaw at down in Florida. And so, because that was, talk about blind squirrel find a nut, he had Tom Shaw was one of his coaches in middle school and high school. Then you look at what Tom Shaw went and did. So Keith was teaching me a lot of stuff that they were doing like in combine prep and speed prep and stuff. So all that to say, yeah, because I would, like some of the powerlifting meets, I was trying to like do incognito, because I would, every chance I had, like I'd go to these like unsanctioned max out fests and go bench and deadlift, and it was always push pulls. And I was in love, and it was like, if I didn't have the forward thinking that I wanted to be a strength coach, I think I would have said it, fuck it, at a young age and been like, I'm all in on this powerlifting portion and go all in on that. But in my head, I knew I wanted to be a strength coach, and I knew like following athletics had to be my route on that. So I didn't get too deep in the weeds of like, I kind of thought there'd be a chance of burnout because I knew that going to play college football was going to be what kept me in academically. Because I knew too, I would always soundboard off of, I would try to find people to talk to, coaches, and be like, what do you need to do to be a strength coach? Because there wasn't like, it was so new back then. It relatively, you just had the big schools had it and the NFL teams had it. And so I was like, what do I need to do this? And it was like, okay, you need your bachelor's, depending your master's, and your CSCS. It's like, okay, cool. And so I was like, fuck, I'm not gonna go to school if I'm not playing football. Like in my head, I felt like I needed something to keep me engaged in that. And especially the path I wanted to go. I wanted to learn as much as I could from that aspect of like how everything felt year round, in season, off season. Now I was also trying to go max out and compete as much as I could, which like explains, I had all my lower body injuries were football contact. All my upper body injuries were like a hybrid of shoulder was football and powerlifting, but I blew out my pec peaking for a comp 2 weeks before fall camp. And God, I'm so lucky I had the head coach I had, because and the thing about that too was there's so much, everybody expects training to be perfect. And I think as a coach, for your lifters, athletes, operators, you should create the most perfect environment you can for them. Like a lot of times you're more of a stress manager, like a guider, than you are like the perfect program. Like you're keeping them out of harm's way from their own factors of their profession or sport. And I think a lot of coaches though, like I have a hard time with coaches who've never been injured, because like, did you ever push hard enough to fuck something up? And how did you come back from it? Because it's hard to take somebody serious who has asterisks to how strong they're going to get. Like if they're like, hey, if I hurt my knee, I'm going to stop this. It's like, well, how do you know? Because my best bench presses were after a shoulder surgery, and my best squats were after 2 knee surgeries. My best deadlifts were after 3 knee surgeries. And it's like, so how do you know, like, how are you going to fully confidently get an athlete back to play if you can't do it with yourself and know what those mental and physical feelings are? So to answer your question, I learned how to do everything the complete wrong way so I could go expand my knowledge to do it the right way, because a lot of those were blessings in disguise. And I think it was meant to happen that way too, because I knew I always wanted to be a coach. And like, what was funny is, had I not blown my pec out, maybe at some point I do, but I don't meet Josh Bryant. I don't go work for Kevin Yoxall. I don't, like, the timing on all this stuff of like these injuries was what led to a lot of good stuff. And so I never was a little bitch about the injuries and was never like, woe is me. I always got the injuries from, and again, this is me fucking up the sport training and the lifting. I never like sat there and was sappy about it. I was like, hey, like, how do I turn this into the biggest positive of learning? Get really good at programming this thing, problem solve, or if I get somebody who had these issues, how do I problem solve for them? But I took it all as like, I'm going to expand this and learn as much as I can from it, because after the pec, it was when I had it reattached, I had reached out like on, and the Q&As are funny as shit. I found some of the old ones like I sent to Elite FTS, and a lot of them were under aliases because like I didn't want my coaches to see like some of the training questions I was asking, because it was like I'm competing and stuff. And like it was funny, one of my coaches had seen Josh Bryant in 2013 posted one of the competition deadlifts I did with him on YouTube, and one of my coaches found it. And he was like, well, fuck, like, I guess this dude's really strong this offseason. And so it's kind of funny because I was like, man, could you have posted it under a different name? Like, it was all good. It was all good. But it was just kind of funny because, like, my coaches secretly were all in on it too, because that college set Colby Carthel and his staff, Colby Carthel, Matt Stormy, like, dude, they were the best coaches to play for. They saw what was happening, because there was never any question of what I was going to do professionally. Like when they would like sit you down and talk to you and they're like, hey, what are you doing after college? Like they didn't even finish the question. Like I already have a stopwatch and whistle, like when they're asking. And so they were always cool on like, in a way, like pushing me to expand on learning and stuff. Cause I was going to like see Josh Bryant as much as I could. And they were cool with it. And I talked to them about it too. I was like, hey, like you guys know this is what I want to do. So like in the, like anytime I could go train at Metroflex, I would. And I think all my coaches knew I wasn't there as a freak athlete either. Like I was there off of like different mental intangibles of like just not letting it not happen that I wasn't going to be there as a player and a starter and like fulfill my role. Because I always like was painfully aware of like on our offensive line, like I knew like, I'm like, dude, these dudes are all better athletes than me, but I'm going to bring something here that like is kind of the gap missing. And not saying that, but you know what I mean on that. And so when I blew my pec out, that's when I reached out to, because I kind of took it from this approach. I'm like, okay, enough fucking monkeying around on education. Like we're done reading these textbooks. We're done reading these articles. I need to start talking to these dudes. And so like I reached out to Louis Simmons, and he was like fucking unreal with what he had provided with me on like, because so right when I took it physically too on like my rehab, because I had that pec was my 4th surgery, and like so I kind of like knew how the rehab and bridging process had worked by this point, which was like a really good aha moment for coaching. And so I reached out as soon as like I had it reattached. I reached out to Louis Sims, and he was like unreal how kind he was with what he had provided me. I reached out to you on like Q&As because I was like, okay, Pecs, like I know who I'm going to. And like that was like the content I got from, or I guess the education I got from Louis, and then the content I got from you fast forwarded me so much further than people on shoulders and pecs for athletics and for the population I work with now. It's not even funny. And it's ironic, like the surgeries I've had, because like the population I work with now, every unit I've worked with has had 0 surgeries the whole time I've worked with them. And that was a big thank you each time from you and Louis, like setting that mark on like how you properly do pecs and shoulders. And then like I was reaching out to you guys, like dudes like DeFranco, and casting a wide net to see how much I could bring in on knowledge base. And then I'd seen through the columns that Josh Bryant moved out to Texas because he was one of your guys' columnist writers, and whatever you want to call it. And so again, I kind of got to this point of everything by just like, hey, mistering. So he had moved out to Metroflex, which I already was like, had that in the highest standard, you know, growing up on Ronnie Coleman videos and those old training videos. I was like, holy shit. So this dude's at Metroflex. He lives in Texas now. I obviously knew who he was already because I was such a big fan of, not him. He's not what I'd call a bench specialist because he definitely did so much great stuff full power, but I loved watching like bench specialists because the crew I started with was a lot of bench specialists. So like I was a big fan of all things bench press. And so when he moved out there, I'm like, dude, holy shit, like awesome. So I hey-mistered him over email and just casted a wide net of like, I didn't really know how a lot of stuff worked non-athletically. And I was like, hey, so like this is who I am, this is where I'm playing. the long and the short of it was when I realized my pec wasn't coming back the way that other injuries had, just by the nature of like, you learn more about like pec reattachments. Like you're never going to get that stretch reflex back. And there's just certain things where like, it's like a lot of times when you have an ACL or different injuries, you might come back, like you look at Adrian Pearson and Barkley, like they fucked around and had like career seasons after the ACL. So with tendons, it's totally different because you never really get like that fast twitch back, and there's a lot of stuff to it. And so when I realized I wasn't gonna be the same bencher, I was like, well, my deadlift fucking sucks, and I can't have a shitty deadlift and a shitty bench. So I like hit him up because he was coming off his 800, and I just like, there was something about the conventional deadlift that just was like I was like, it was my new addiction of like lifting. Because like I think you have those chapters, and that's where a lot of people mess up, is they like find one chapter and stay there. I think you have to be in love with all things of getting better as a lifter, where it's like I think you can debunk anybody by saying then what with their programming or their strategy, because like a lot of people haven't thought that far, where it's like, hey, if you're in love with this certain lifting sport, what happens when you're not producing the same numbers? Then what? And like they haven't thought that far. And it's like the lifer is going to say like, well, I'm going to do strongman next, or I'm going to do bodybuilding next, or I'm going to do this. The ones who like I categorize every lifter and coach as a lifer or gate crasher. The lifer is always going to have like the like, well, if I'm fucking missing my toes, then I'm just going to get strong everywhere else. Like I'm just not going to do calf raises anymore. The gate crasher is going to be like, well, it's time to go play video games, or like it's time to like, they already have their way out. And so I went and hey, Mr. Josh, and he was cool as hell. He had known Guy Morris from when Guy was at Baylor. There was some kind of connection with he had gone to like Guy Morris's house parties. And so he knew like the whole Baylor staff, who was like, most of that was my staff at Texas A&M Commerce. And so I was like, hey man, like I think as a lifter, I was overthinking the technique portions of things a lot. And I was like, I want to work with you as much in person as I can too. Cause I think a lot of like, I have a lot of gaps. And he's like, cool. Like, so he's like, yeah, like he was down for the cause of like, come train here as much as you can. And then like, we'll like piece it together. Cause I want to make sure I just had nothing that we could work on. And I was ready. Anytime I like go to get coached or critiqued, like I'm ready to just get my ass kicked. So I like fully went there and was like expecting him to like do a 2-hour technique session with me or some shit. And that was the opposite of what we fucking did. And so February 2013, I go hike over and I go deadlift with him. And it was just like one of those, I think there's only like 2 gyms that I've walked in, like Metroflex and Westside, where I walked in, it was just like fucking, like it was like a 5-gum commercial mixed with like Biotest Spike just smacked in your face. Like you walk in, you're like, fuck, this is the spot. Like if it's not bolted, I'm fucking lifting it. And so we went in, and I was like, so I'm kind of like in my mind, I'm like, yeah, play with my technique. And just we start lifting. I'm like, how is it? And he's like, good, just pull fucking fast. Like, and just like it simplified it a lot, whereas like I think we can like over critique stuff. And so it was cool because he was just like, yeah, like dude, like be violent as shit, pull fast and commit to the pull. And like, so we had done that. And I remember the whole workout. I have like one of the, like all of us, like that weird memory of like number sets, reps and stuff. And like, so we hit our triple, then we went into the 8 triples of speed, then 5 singles of deficit, then 3x5 dead row. I told him, I was like, dude, I don't want to check my blind spot ever. Like I want a fucking neck. And I was always obsessed with that. So we did like single arm shrugs, neck harness, dead hypers, abs, and like we just burned it down. And it was funny too, because like one thing that stood out to me was like I was bleeding everywhere, because like we had done, you know, we're on 14 work sets of deadlift before we even get to dead rows. And that was kind of cool, like learning the different, like building your bases, you would say, of power preps. Because a lot of people like overcook the volume on the main lifts, which circled back to like a lot of what I do with guys now. But I'm bleeding everywhere, and I was like, hey man, like you guys got like, this was so fucking stupid ass hindsight at Metroflex. I'm like, you guys got like Lysol or like something I can clean this off with? He's like, no, leave a piece of you, dude. Fucking next exercise. I was like, yeah, like, okay, yeah. Like, don't trust a bar that doesn't have blood on it. Okay.
Sorry, I was just saying it's really interesting listening to someone who was a meathead in football. You know, normally they would switch off and they wouldn't be able to reel off their coaches and what the programming was like. But because you had that lens looking at it longer term, like this is what I want to go into, instead of being the switched off athlete who kind of sticks with football for a few years and then just ends up in the gym, you threw yourself into that and you took so much education from those coaches you had coming up, which, you know, every athlete in theory pretty much has access to, but probably doesn't use. So you took that same scenario and took a lot different stimuli and knowledge and experiences from it, and obviously ultimately use that in your career. And I just think that's really interesting how you turned something that wasn't a particular love, as in playing football, and just flipped it on its head and thought, well, what can I get from this if I don't love the actual sport? And then obviously that led to where it did. I just think that's a really cool example of how you don't have to necessarily love where you're at to get something really meaningful long-term from it and have it project you onwards. So with all of those kind of coaches playing into you, you've gone to Josh Bryant, and I imagine at this point you're like a sponge, like absorbing everything you can from these people. Your current training philosophy then, if you had to kind of like summarize it for all of us here with all those different inputs, how would you do that?
So I was very, very lucky to have the people help me who did. And I will stand on the table, headbutt somebody on like they want to have a debate of like I worked for the best dudes and learned from the best dudes. And so part of that is I owe it to them to not bastardize what they taught me and to be able to apply what they had taught me to the environments I'm coaching, because like I think that was what I really learned. So Josh Bryant was kind of like, you could say like my private sector mentor in a way. Cause like, I think like what he was doing at the time, like was unheard of, and what he's doing now, I mean, it's like, holy shit. And like, that was so new to me to learn that style coming from the athletic side, and then working for Kevin Yoxall at Rice. So I was just very fortunate to where I learned from the dude who's doing it the best here and the dude who's doing it the best here. And I felt very like kung fu, like where it's like, I'm soaking in all this great knowledge they're being generous with, and it's my job not to fuck this up. And that is like my core value of how do I apply this without reinventing the wheel. So all that say, my philosophy, if you will, is rule number one of business is you always stay in business. And rule number one of like coaching an athlete is you always keep them an athlete as long as they want, or a lifter as long as they want. And so a lot of it is we are establishing the goal, we're working backwards from the goal, but I'm looking at, especially with the populations I work with now in team settings, squadron settings, unit settings, individual settings of like Spec Ops, where it's all the same but so different, is I'm controlling those stress factors more than like anybody can have a sweet program, but like you have to be good at systems and how do we control these factors to keep it going. So I mean, if I was gonna bumper sticker it, like my philosophy is like thick neck, thin morals, you know, grips that are gonna break handshakes, and just like being healthy and strong. But there's so many different ways to apply that, especially with like when I started coaching at the team setting like Rice University, and I kind of like blind squirrel found and stumbled into the individual side of things, where I was at a powerlifting meet, because I never planned on, I think too many coaches try to specialize too early, just like we see that with lifters and athletes. I swear to God, if I don't answer a question, just like cut me off, come back to point on that, because I think I'm answering it. But I think a lot of coaches, they over specialize too quick. And for me, that was something I was terrified of as a coach, because like it was, I'm not gonna say easy. Nothing is easy like on like the athletic side or in any of these environments of like landing a job or a gig. Like it's like, you know, it's as saturated as the field is, it's still very like small to get into and get certain spots. And one thing that was like I was terrified of was like being that actor who's like typecasted to a role. And coming from football, it was expected to go into football, but I was just in love with coaching, and I always wanted to keep that base. And so to like kind of fast forward and then circle back, I'd done a competition, and online coaching was kind of coming up, and I always thought, like, I don't know, it's odd to me that people get into online coaching so quick with never having hands-on people, because I don't think they know how to truly problem solve if you're just a guy who can write programs and you're just applying what you learned online to somebody else online. But the person who's really good online learned it all in person with athletes and having that touch, or with lifters, just whoever they're working with. And so I never planned on, like, I was like online maybe, but like really down the line. And I was doing a comp, and it was like a smaller town, and it was where I had hit my first 700 deadlift. And they like, all these girls like rushed to the front, like it was like a rock star at a concert, like, where, cause like I'd nailed probably the first 7 that a lot of them had seen. And so they like rushed to the front, and they're like, it was kind of cool. Like, they're all like sending it to me. I didn't know any of them, but like they're sending it to me on Instagram. There's all these cool different angles of it. And one of them is funny. She like tags her coach, and like pretty much it's like her like breakup post with him. She's like, yeah, check this dude out. And I didn't think anything of it. I was like, oh, like maybe she was showing her, like, I was like, it was a good fucking deadlift. So, but some people started asking me, hey, do you coach? And I didn't really know what that meant, because I'm like, yeah, like professionally, like that's what I do. And they're like, oh, cool. So, but they meant online. They're like, so you coach online? And I was like, it was like, you never miss I was like, yes, indeed I do. Because I'm like, okay, well, like, you never turn down like a good business opportunity. I hadn't coached online yet, but I'm like, well, what's the difference? Like, comparatively, when you're coaching so many different athletes in person, you're like, it's kind of weird, because it's like easier but harder in a lot of different ways, which, like, I think you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. But like newer coaches, like, there's a lot of different factors to that, because like there's the programming, but then there's everything else. And so I did start coaching them, and luckily, like, I had learned from Josh Bryant, and so I had like the team setting, but then I have like, what does right look like at the individual private setting too. And then that's kind of, I accidentally started online coaching just from that experience.
So with you, obviously you have quite a wide plethora of athletes. You know, you got the private sector and the special ops, you got the powerlifters, the strongman competitors, and all that. With your anchors of training philosophies, you know, which were quite broad, as they should be. How do you differentiate then between those populations that have such varying demands on them, but also what similarities, you know, let's say we were to take a program from a special ops guy prepping and a powerlifter or whatever, what also common trends would we then see that would kind of run through that you would say that probably need to be in everyone's programming?
We never get away from bodybuilding. I think, and it's kind of funny, because like we've gotten with strength conditioning and programming and lifting, we've kind of gotten like, if there's a better way to say this, like say, but like we've kind of gone like non-binary with shit, like where everything has to have a title, where it's like, oh, I do this, I do this, I do this, I do this. And it's like, well, you just fucking train. Like, let's stop overcomplicating it. And so bodybuilding like would be the thing you're gonna see in every single program. And but I think where people are fucking that up is, it's not, bodybuilding isn't you go get on a stage, and that's the sport of bodybuilding. It's not the training of bodybuilding. The training of bodybuilding is fixing imbalances and being painfully aware in your sport or lifestyle or profession, what are gonna be your imbalances, kind of looking in the future, because when you do like it, that's where, as a lifter, or especially the people I work with, you can't take influencer knowledge and apply it to you, because you have to think, how would this influencer apply it to me if they were me? So with that, my volumes are going to be totally different, and the emphases are going to be totally different based on sport, profession, or, I mean, because my individual coaching is super, super wider than I ever planned on it being. And then, so like when I'm working with the team settings, but the thing is, if you have, like, I work with a lot of pregnant females, and the last thing we're going to be doing in that third trimester is bodybuilding. Like, so you can never you're never going to be at a point in your life where you can't bodybuild. But they might be to a point, like, because I tried to problem solve for them. I tell them to let me know as soon as movements start feeling odd, so we can take movements out 2 weeks before we need to, and then we can keep you training all the way up till game day. And that has been, it's going to change for each person, because like they might, depending, like bench might be the first odd movement, squat might be the first one, deadlift might be. With my wife, her first, with our firstborn, so the pregnancy going into third trimester, we like are doing that, and the first thing that felt weird was bench off the arch, then squat, and then she deadlifted up till 2 weeks out. With our little boy, it was like the opposite. And so the order was the opposite, just based off leverages. So like you can't always have a blanket plan. You always have to be able to like manipulate the power movements with strongman movements and the bodybuilding movements based off of the individual. And so, and there's certain, like, because I don't have a particular philosophy where everybody needs power lift, everybody needs strongman. I do think everybody needs bodybuild, but that's just because bodybuilding is strength training and injury prevention. When you look at all good athletes who are injury free or limited injuries or playing around injuries, it's bodybuilding. And same with my operators and pilots. If they're on an ass kicker of a TDY deployment, guess what? Like, we're probably going to be doing bodybuilding to get you return to play on, because all off season for operators and pilots is all return to play. So it's like, it's the opposite of a season for an athlete, right? And so for them, it's like, if a dude has a week of FMPs, and I've been on FMPs where like we had, and don't get me wrong, like I'm not that, a lot of people, they think you have to like throw yourself into your environment, and like if you're working with operators, you got to throw on ranger panties and know the lingo and like red team go, and like, dude, no, I go and like I'm the meathead eating a breakfast burrito while they're doing this shit, and I'm just like watching movement and stuff, and like I'm just observing like I would at practice. I'm not going to go hop in drills and start doing one-on-ones with the receivers. So a lot of like coaches like, dude, just watch. Stay the fuck out of their way. And so I'm on FMPs, and like there was one we had where the show time was 5 a.m. and we didn't wrap up till 3 a.m. the next day. And so what the hell are you going to do with those dudes that week besides just go get a pump or get some traction? Because it's either got to be, either way, we got to chase blood flow on recovery. So either go get a bodybuilding pump and make yourself feel good. I was laughing at that Halle Berry Monsters ball. And then, or you're going to go get traction, go belt squat walk, reverse hyper, abs, stretch hip flexors. And like, I call them oil change workouts. And it's like, so that's what it's going to be, but those never leave. Like if you're an enthusiast of one part, it's like, okay, we're addicted to CrossFit, we're addicted to HIIT. What the fuck HIIT are you going to do that they didn't just do these days in a row at this FMP? So you can't be married to one thing on that. Yeah.
And I kind of apologize for the question. Cause, No, I mean the philosophy question, because like I hate that if I get asked that, 'cause it's like, well, the one I need to use for that person. But when you're looking at these kind of common trends throughout for your athletes, how do you deal with the athletes that have so many different demands? So like, as you've kind of said there, you know, in reality, everyone's goals are kind of the same. You've got like hypertrophy, strength, maybe conditioning, whatever. The different populations maybe just need different amounts of them at different times or whatever. When you have, say, those sports athletes or those special operators that, should we say, are like being pulled by lots of different strings, you know, they've got their practices or they've got the stress of operations, and they have all these different systems, i.e., you know, maybe aerobic strength, anaerobic strength, whatever, all these things they need to try and tick. How do you approach that from a programming and stress management perspective? Because it's very different to, say, just coaching a powerlifter who's more unimodal, if you get what I'm saying. So how do you approach that in your head when you're looking at kind of global stressors and programming?
Let me add one other factor to that. They don't know when they're going to be deployed either. So you don't know how long you could actually run them through like a pure strength block. It could be a week, it could be 4 fucking months.
Yeah.
So how do you approach those things?
On this particular topic, we could go 6 hours. So like drive me on this on like, because I'm going to go some different ways with this. But this is its own course of how to navigate this shit. Because you nailed the
you're navigating the unpredictable.
Yes. And so I was talking with, because your best feedback is going to be talking from like you have in these team settings, you have your soundboard of dudes who, like, the dudes who are doing it fucking perfect. And like I was talking to you yesterday about like some of the dudes like Jake Hollister and Carl Granderson, and like and that's so for switching back and forth, because this is like good context for any setting, but those dudes were easy. College football guys were easy to soundboard off of because they did everything perfectly and did everything right to the T. So watching Hollister warm up with a PVC pipe, he would show up to the same rack every day, grab a PVC pipe, do the same warm up, and you could just watch his face on how he's feeling that day and what we need to adjust. And he's not going to tell you, I mean, he's not going to say poop with a mouthful of shit. But you're going to be able to read him. And so to answer back to point on the question though, for like when there's so many different things going on, you have to have these honest conversations with your dudes or gals on, everybody wants to chase the low-hanging fruit of what they're naturally good at or what got them there. In Spec Ops, it's usually their cardio base. And I explained to them where I'm like, you guys went through this heinous pipeline, multi-year pipeline, where a lot of it was weeding you guys out with conditioning. Don't you guys fucking think you're probably pretty good at conditioning? So a lot of coaches will chase the low-hanging fruit in Spec Ops, and they'll do like, and I don't mean to laugh, but it's like, it is kind of, it's lazy as fuck. But you work with these athletes on, like, let's say, like when you watch some of these NFL workouts that these like guru coaches are doing, the entertainment, if you will. Shout out Buddy Morris on that. I love that entertainment shit. Yeah. And personal terrorists entertainment. And like, but it's like, so they're doing these drills with these guys and it's all sport specific, and they're trying to act like they like made this dude this athlete, and you're like, bro, this dude's parents and grandparents made that shit. You're just too lazy to look at the shit he actually needs to work on. And like, kudos for you, and I feel bad for the parents that buy into that shit, but you like, that's easy to do. So with operators, it's easy to go on to the side of HIIT, energy system, and all this stuff. Like, it's easy to chase that. So I need to have honest conversations with dudes and be like, okay, we feel confident in this and we know how quick we can get this up. Here's the other lapses in the game that we need to work on. And you need to be painfully aware on both sides. Like, this might not look what you think it looks like, but this is what you're going to get the biggest carryover from. So we need to get as general as we can. And what's funny too, though, is I have so many dudes who, they have such a wicked cardio background that the more strength we do and the more power they do, like, they're running their best times ever and they're hitting their best rucks ever. And then I know when we're doing an assessment selection, I only need to start rucking this far out, and then like we can get a better view on what that peaking volume looks like. But you, on the deployment side too, it has to be, with a team setting, it has to be conjugate year round, because I'm going to have a team that might be on a jump trip. And the last thing I'm doing when they're doing that many jumps is we're not doing deadlift and we're not doing squat or variations of, because there's so much. The number one injury rate is from jumping for SCIs. And so we're going to avoid that. And it's going to be mostly traction, mostly like, it's going to be barbell-less accessories for squats and deadlift. But then I might have another team that has an admin week, and this is the same week, right? So this is the exact same week on the calendar. One team's jumping, one team is on admin week. We might be going heavy that week with you guys, and we might be treating this like a big old reload this week and just getting traction on you guys from all those jumps.
Sure. I like that you mentioned the rucking times and stuff improving with the strength, because it was summed up to me, and I just like this analogy where like the person who wins the marathon is the person who puts the most force into the ground over 26 miles or whatever. Mm-hmm. Obviously the marathon run doesn't need to be an IFBB pro, but it makes you realize there. But with them always having to be ready, does that in your kind of coaching perspective take a lot of different systems out of the equation anyway? Because you can't be like peaking and putting other systems kind of on the back burner because who knows when a mission's going to come up. So everything kind of has to be trained concurrently. Like they need to be at 80, 90% of everything all the time, right? So does that almost make your life a little bit easier by having that unpredictability? It's like, well, we just got to train everything to some degree. We can't do like a max strength phase and let your conditioning go to shit. Because then if an operation or whatever comes up and you're gassed, mission failed or whatever. So in that, does it almost kind of help in some way that you just know they have to be on all the time?
I never really think of it that way on because there's no other way to think about it, you know what I mean? So it's like when you like see how their training looks. So a jort cycle is 24 months and you have a 6-month deployment and you have the 18-month leading up to that, which is like the off season, if you will. The deployment, depending on what that deployment looks like, is usually going to be there. So if I'm talking to a athletic coach, and we're like looking at this from the two sides of it, because in the athlete setting, we know when the seasons are, when the practices are, when camp starts, all that. So your buildup is very simple. I'm not going to say like there's no disrespect, because a lot of people fuck that up and a lot of people doing it awesome. But you know what it looks like, and there's not going to be any like, oh, guess what, motherfucker, we're playing rival this week, and you're like, wait, what? But like season doesn't start till the fall. Well, that's what Spec Ops looks like. It's like one of my dudes said it, every week can be a Super Bowl. And so you just have to like know that, and it's the specificity is always going to be like staying injury free and staying deployable, but that doesn't look how it sounds on paper to people, like where they think like stay injury free, they're thinking like these yoga Circus Soleil stretches and trying to fit into suitcases. And it's what that means is like hard strength training year round, just in different ways, where like I need to be painfully aware of what are they coming up on? Like, so are we doing more like, I call them lymphac lifts. So everything in Spec Ops I gauge is a lymphac main lift and a lymphac accessory lift. Because the reason I do that is that way on the lymphac main lifts, if a dude goes to a deployment site with like bare bones equipment and it's mostly your bar, rack, dumbbells, hopefully cables, maybe kettlebells, the training, like we're not going to have specialty bars, we're not going to have other equipment. So when I have access to that other equipment, specialty bars, we use that as much as possible, because we're not training for a powerlifting meet. And so we're going all fat bars for pressing, all Swiss bars for pressing. We're going to like do a lot of like tempos, pauses and stuff like that. And then on the squat variation, we're doing all front loaded Zercher, and kind of like what we had talked about a little bit. It's like, how much do I need their squatting? It's kind of funny, because you do, just by looking at your success on different training scenarios, you can find the right lifts. And they're like squat, like, and I love squat. I think all of us at this table do, but like squat in that environment of just a traditional barbell squat is like tits on a nun, nuts on a pre. Squat in Spec Ops, it's like they're all pretty worthless. Now the squat patterns, front squat, Zercher, safety bar, like where it's challenging your positioning, those are worth their weight in gold. They're going to bring everything up. And it's just a lot like when you look at like these dudes are in kit so much, I'm front loading them as much as I can, and I'm doing lifts that are going to keep them around instead of burn the candle quicker. And then what's funny about that though is then dudes, like, because I have guys who want to do powerlifting meets, and I have guys who like when they're down range, we'll do more specific style training, because they do have the controllable sometimes of like the similar schedule. All their squats go up, and it's like, so you wide pyramid, tall pyramid. Sure. And so we do lymphac lifts for all the made movements year round. And I found that great for the new, because the other thing you have to look at in Spec Ops too is you're going to have a dude who is 21, and then I've coached the longest standing operator in Spec Ops, and like you have them on the same roster, and so they're over a 30-year gap between those two. And when you do the lymphac lifts, it's just finding what's making the lift more challenging. It doesn't mean like harder isn't better, because it's just like, okay, then let's go bench press and punch me in the head. But making it more effective is the goal. So like I'm finding the least effective dose of that lift of what I could get the biggest carryover on. But then I do the same with the accessories, because that way when they're on, so a TDY, temporary duty station, it's their work trips. When a guy's on a TDY, a lot of times like the equipment, sometimes like depending where they're going, like I have really good relationships with some of the gyms, and I'll make sure they're set up at a good strongman gym or a good powerlifting gym, and like make sure we're set there. But if it's not, and the equipment is a little more bare bones, we're going to rely off the lymphatic accessories, because like we'll do a lot of like tempo work, half fulls, pre-exhaust stuff, band work year round, TRX sled work, and like, cause like if I can ship them out with like some sleds or something, like we just got all their upper and lower accessories taken care of. Now all they have, like we packed out one time in ISU, like it's just plyo boxes, axle bars, trap bars, and a sled. And like, it's just, you're doing everything Zercher and front squat off the boxes. And then like we're doing a lot of floor press rolling off the plyo boxes. But you have to be able to have your training. As a coach, you need to know the best way to like break the rules for your rules. And so you need to know all the time, like, if I have this program and these factors go, how am I going to make sure this program keeps going? And as a coach, like, you need to ask yourself those questions, because I think a lot of guys struggle in the like Spec Ops tactical population. They struggle with like, you're doing a linear program, and we go this, and this guy has this TDY that he didn't even know about. Then what? Are you going to progress and maybe get injured, or go back in time and waste his time? So that's why like we have it where all the units I work with, like if you go on that jump trip on a heavy deadlift day, I'm not going to have you make it up on either ends of it. I'm going to adjust that day where it's a recovery return to play day. And guess what? You were jumping, you weren't meant to heavy deadlift that day, and we're all going to be fine. But you have to have those capabilities in your program to adjust like that.
Hey guys, if you're enjoying what you're watching, make sure to take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe.
It's interesting listening to you talk about the exercise selection, where your concern is more transference as opposed to load, or just putting any exercise on a pedestal. It's the transference of to whatever the end goal actually is, and also the logistics play into it there. So when you're working with these, should we say, valuable individuals, you know, if they're a D1 player or a highly trained Spec Ops, it's, with all due respect, if they get injured for 3 months, it's a little bit different to, you know, someone Gen Pop or whatever. What do you see as the role of a strength coach? And I ask this because I know we spoke about it yesterday, Larry, but I think there's a lot of glorification of what a strength coach does for these individuals who are already performing at a high level, and probably would in almost any context. So when you are getting these kind of higher performers or valuable individuals, what is your real goal as a strength coach? Because, you know, many will look at that and be like, put as many plates on the bar and get them strong, or do all this cool Instagram shit, you know, with them like doing 10-yard dashes after doing deadlift with chains, or, you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
What is your day to day? What is your actual role if you do it well?
Yeah. It's pretty simple. It's keep them deployable, keep them not injured. Like it's, and a lot of times, like when you oversimplify like that, a lot of people, they're like, well, wait a second, how do I fuck that up? And it's like, dude, that's literally, because these individuals, like when you look at a professional athlete and you look at like professional operators and pilots, and like you look at the training dumped into them, that's 7 figures. Like each individual is worth 7 figures. And then also the way I explain it to them, because like a lot of them, it's tough. Like when you're talking to somebody that's dropping bombs and shooting guns, and like when you're talking to somebody who's doing that for a living, it's so hard to tell them to think past their nose, because like you're like, hey bud, like let's think about next week. And he's like, motherfucker, like I got to go do this shit. And like, it's like, yeah, you should probably be pretty focused on that. So you have to be focused further down the line, where a lot of them, I like make sure like, we know you're capable of doing what you're doing because you as an operator like made it through your pipeline. And a lot of coaches, they try to cherry pick that and go like, I made this operator this. And it's like, no, like again, his fucking parents and the shit in his neck, like the stuff in between his ears is what makes him good at that. So my job is to make sure he does that as long as he wants, and to make sure that his quality of life is good for his wife and kids, and that hopefully he can like toss a ball with his grandkids someday. And that's where I'm talking to them, and I'm like, hey, like I'm more your insurance policy than your performance, because we know you're a higher performer. If you're in the setting, you are a high performer. I'm here to think about the shit that you're not thinking about. But then what's funny is the side effect of that is they get really fucking strong. Like when you focus on like making sure this dude is just durable, your strength numbers a lot of times, like organically, if you're lifting the right movements, because again, like what's funny is like with a lot of my teams I work with, like you've never seen on the program a bench press, a squat, or a deadlift in those words.
Mm-hmm.
Every variation of it. We've never done a straight up bench. We do a lot of closed grip. We do a lot of we can alphabet soup that all day. If you want to hear 100 variations of bench press, like hit us up on a separate Q&A. Mm-hmm. But you hit all those variations of it, and the side effect of the good health and the durability and the low injury rates is going to be big numbers. And I'd talk to you about what's funny is like sometimes on these, like you can find the data pretty easy, and like I don't even like that fucking word, and I'm gonna get made fun of by a lot of people know me close for even saying that word, but you can pull all these metrics on the back end very easy and go, okay, so like we had this deployment, and everybody who came back from this deployment who benched over 300 pounds has healthy shoulders. Everybody who came back from this deployment who deadlifts over 500 pounds has a healthy back. Oh, the dudes who are crying about their shoulders and back and their face down, ass up on the PT table are the ones avoiding getting strong. It's an easy, like, it's like one of these things doesn't look like the other. And like, so it's easy to find these answers to training for injury prevention.
Sure. So when you bullet pointed your philosophy, you mentioned neck and grip, right? Okay. So with those being, and there are three things you mentioned, right? So neck and grip were 2/3 of what you noted. How did you come to that conclusion? How did that become so ingrained in how you train people?
So when you take over a population, the first thing I do is, and I learned for some awesome dudes at like how you read the athlete, the lifter. And when you take over that unit or like whatever it may be, talk to your oldest, most beat up dudes, talk to everybody and ask them what hurts, ask them what injuries are you worried about, what injuries have you had, and then draw conclusions of what do they need to be thinking about, because there might be some injuries they're not even thinking about. And so when I had talked to the first unit I started working with, like, hey, what hurts? And everybody, neck, every single one. You ask them, hey, what are you doing for your neck training? And they just stare at you. And you're like, fucking, this is going to be easy. Like, okay. Anybody who's been around like a masculine, or not to like a physical population like football, wrestling, fighting, like neck is like mandatory. And so when you're talking to these dudes who are wearing helmets and NVGs and even like these pilots too, and they're all in odd, awkward positions with something on their head, and if it's night, it's even heavier. Like, okay, that is not hard to figure out. For me, at least, I was like, 100 reps before bed of neck, just in case I dream of yoke. And so that was a big one where, like, when I talk to a ground unit, so if I'm talking to operators, everybody's got neck issues. If I'm talking to a flying unit, everybody has neck issues. And except for, like, shout out to all my dudes doing it right, because it was funny, we did the NDI survey for like neck pain and stuff, and it was so funny because my folks were such a waste of everybody's time to do that, because they all scored zeros. Like, we train neck, our necks feel great. And so we had to find more people in this survey who don't train neck to find anybody with neck pain. So that was that. And then the grip part marries itself on your absolute strength is going to carry over to grip. And especially in these populations for like operators, every mission set, you're carrying shit. Mandatory. Like, it's happening. You are never slick. You're always going to have external load on, and you're always carrying something. Those two things are always happening. And so it's kind of, I don't want to like, you figure it out. Like, they have shit on their head, they're carrying stuff and they're wearing stuff. Let's put on some muscle mass, get grips, get a strong neck. And then with a lot of the assessment selections they do, like at a tier 1 assessment selection, some of them may be carrying things for over 30 miles. And so you're carrying jerry cans in each hand for over 30 miles with load. We should probably get some pretty strong crotch beaters. And it's a good metric for like fatigue as well. So I have a lot of guys, like if they're like auto-regulating their training that day, just squeeze your fist. And you're going to know exactly what you need to adjust that day.
Sure. You mentioned this, they both kind of feed into each other now. So like you mentioned kind of your job is keep them deployable, keep them playing, you know, whatever, game day ready, whatever. The grip and the neck training, as you were kind of two key elements there that you kind of identified as common weak points that lead to them not being deployable or game ready. So if we're looking at your job as almost like a durability or a robustness or resiliency coach, what other facets do you think feed into creating resilient athletes? You know, as general principles, is there, you know, an aspect of like putting them in positions that are purposely outside of normal ranges of motion or traditional like linear or bilateral lifts, etc.? Like, how do you go about creating someone who's bulletproof, for want of a better way of putting it?
So I think the range of motion part, I think get them as strong as hell in the range of motions they need. And I mean, so like, that's kind of a double-edged sword of like, be strong as a human in all of your range of motions that you have, or for your sport or demand, be as strong as you can in those range of motions. I think where some people are like going off the deep end on that is like, they're getting strong in what I call jackass range of motion. So they're like, there's a lot of these like weird trends where it's like, we're going to get suitcase strong. And like you see, but it's so funny because you see them, I'm not trying to like bash influencers or anything, but like you see these dudes on Instagram and like they're doing this like these crazy workouts, but you see their page and it's on nobody. And there's no athletes doing this. And it's like, why the hell would you listen to, because this dude is obviously arrogant enough where if he was doing this with anybody, it's obviously going to be on his page. And so it doesn't work. And so that's where like circling back, like as an athlete or an operator pilot, like you have to go like, one, is this even being done with anybody? And two, how would I apply this to me? So get as strong as you can in those range of motions, which again, circle back bodybuilding, like train to full range of motion, stretch contraction. Like it's not that hard, but for a strongman is a huge way to be bulletproof. You don't know how to brace until you have like walked with a sandbag or a yoke or a Zercher yoke. You're gonna learn very fast what bracing is. And so those are great because it's kind of a contrast training too, where like if I'm rucking with 65 pounds and a ruck on a deployment, you know, is like gonna be most times, not ruck, but like all the external load is most of the time gonna be 80 pounds plus. So if I can carry a heavy ass yoke, that stuff's probably going to feel pretty light in contrast. And so we do that a lot for assessment selections too, where like I'll give them a strongman off season. And then as we like start transferring it to the ruck, there'll be like sprinkles of it, but we'll do a heavy strongman off season to get them better at the ruck and finding that value of like feeling bulletproof because you're getting all that isometric strength too. So we do a ton of time under tension strongman. We do a lot of like our strongman will wave in conjugate as well, where we'll do like dynamic effort strongman too for like mountain terrain trips, where I'm going combinations of like farmer walk plus sled, Zercher yoke plus sled, chains, and doing that where we have a mountain terrain trip coming up. And then we're going to wave the intensities off that. But also we're doing it as an off season where like carry heavy shit far strength. I need to have all those muscles where I'm going to be able to hold posture for that whole time, so I'm not getting pulled forward.
Sure. So you think, I mean, there's a big trend there with loaded carries. Do you think, you know, for anyone who's listening to this that isn't special ops or whatever, isn't an athlete, do you think that's a really underutilized training modality in general? Obviously, there's a space element, but do you think that, you know, when people are talking about what are the big movement patterns we should be strong on, do you think that should be in there as like a pillar for that reason, the postural strength and the robustness?
Yeah, that should be a core value for anybody because like, so I'm on the flight yesterday and I'm like, dude, I'm obnoxious as hell to talk to. I'm like Forrest Gump of strength. Like whenever I like meet people, like we just like, I'm like, yeah, let's talk. And I'm sitting next to a really nice lady, grandma, shout out to D. And And we're talking she likes fitness and likes nutrition and stuff, and likes, like, we're just talking about like what she does. And usually they'll get to like a point where like anybody you can circle back to what is functional training, which is carry heavy shit far. We've bastardized functional training. It's not fitting in a suitcase, it's moving odd objects is functional. And so when I'm talking to this grandma, it's like, you need front loaded carries. You got grandkids, you're gonna have great grandkids. And like, I think like if you're a parent and you can't hold your kid while you're eating, you're full of shit. Like, you should have that capability to like, I gotta hold my kid while I'm eating. If you have to set your kid down, like, start fucking doing some carries. And because it's gonna happen. And like, when you see, there was a bodybuilder who tore his bicep, and I think the reason was like, he was moving a washing machine. It's like, at some point, dude, you should have learned how to brace, because like, bodybuilders are my favorite to teach strongman to for first time lifters, because like, transfer is a thing. And when I'm working with a bodybuilder, they know how to cue their muscles better than anybody, because they know how to pose and flex. And so like, I'm drawing in and teaching them like which finger to put pressure on to like pull in lat, and they're doing it perfectly because they know how to adjust those poses on stage. So they're awesome to teach strongman to. But had this bodybuilder learned that, he would have known where to brace instead of trying to like curl a washing machine. And that's why, like, with, you were talking about team setting you were talking about space, like space is an issue.
Yeah.
And strongman is really easy to do in that facet when you're on limited space. And we do this all the time with the teams I work with, because like, you never know what space they're going to have. So when you're doing a team setting, because like, I've had a full room of people doing strongman at once, and like, if you've loaded yokes and stuff, like, that's not really team setting. But if I have 40 guys in the weight room at each time doing strongman, we'll close the gap a little bit more, and we'll do like, instead of doing a straightforward carry, we'll do small box step up. So I'll keep it like under 8 inches, and we'll do heavy zerchers for time on the interval. We'll do heavy step ups with the safety bar. The only place to buy that is elitefts. That's the only place we will buy it. And we'll do that for the small box step ups, and we'll do timed intervals and go heavy. But you can do it in a large setting with minimal space. Like, I hate when people are like, oh, I can't do the yoke because I didn't have the space. And it's like, dude, you can literally walk back and forth with safety bar, make it even better with that small box, but you can do it in team settings in small spaces. We'll do time under tension, walking back and forth with a farmer walk.
I mean, you can even march on the spot, right? I mean, I'm not sure if Ilya, when he was talking to you, he was saying about, instead of walking up and down here, we just had hanging chains on his yoke. So when he stands there and marches on the spot, the chains are, you can do it if you want to, right?
Yeah.
But it sounds like, in terms of creating a robust athlete, it's I don't want to like boil down your philosophy too much and dumbify it, but it sounds like, if you've got to carry 80 pounds, we're going to get you carrying 150 pounds. Like, make it harder than the shit you actually have to do.
Yes.
Kind of creates a robust person. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, because we'll do, for like the carry emphasis, and this is so I was talking about lymphatic lifts. This is like a really good way to auto regulate for like your main lifts. And what I'll do so we're going to an assessment selection prep for the deadlift is going to be your best indicator for a good rucker. And anybody who wants to fucking throw down on the numbers, like, I'll fucking, like, let's go. I got everybody's deadlifts, all their strength that goes with it. And you can look at those ruckers compared to the deadlifts, and their deadlift to ruck ratio is always going to be the biggest like predictor you find on a good rucker. Especially because like a lot of these dudes too, like you're talking about, like if you're like in that 200 pound range and you're hitting triple body weight deadlifts, like you're probably doing something right, and your relative strength's pretty good on top of your absolute strength. And so what we had found, or my guys, like obviously like us at this table know, but like we're talking about like my guys who like had to stumble upon this, is like they found their grip readiness and their carry heavy shit far readiness was a big indicator of their deadlift. And so one of my like favorite dudes ever, he put it perfectly. Out of respect for what he's doing, I won't say his name. And like when he's done doing what he's doing, like I'll fucking say his name to everybody. And this dude is awesome. And he put it perfectly because he deadlifts the house, and he was the operator of the year at the tier 1 OTC he was at. And he was like talking to me, soundboard and post. So like you make it in the door at a tier 1 unit. Now you have to keep yourself there. So it doesn't mean it's kind of like an NFL camp. Like just because you got picked up in free agency, like now it's time to earn your 53-man roster spot. And so he was there, kicked ass, still kicking ass. And he was like, hey man, my like grip's kind of getting shoddy. I was like, how's your deadlift? He's like, fucking awful. I was like, he's like, oh, he's like, so if I'm retiring and I was like, dude, you're going to take over my emails for a week. Like, he goes, if I'm retiring at 65, 25 to 35 is my deadlift for the grip at 65. I was like, okay, we just solved all the tactical world's problems right now. Like, thank you. Like you, yeah. So big time indicator there. And, it's going to like what we'll do for a lot of the, like we were talking about the, like small distance, like, so I'll have them do extended holds on deadlift. So like if I have on that assessment selection prep, my heavier deadlifters, like if a dude is nailing the gold standard for like all the military PT tests and stuff is always the trap bar. And if I have a guy who's over a 600-pound trap bar deadlift, I'm more concerned with like maintaining the strength and power in that assessment selection than I am building it, because like I want it to transfer. And so what I'll do is a lot of extended holds with them, where I have one dude who like we did a 60-second 600-pound like hold, and like we'll work, and I aim for like on the different, depending on like obviously I'm scaling it per deadlift, and I'll have them have these are your working weights for the holds compared to your best deadlift. And like if they're able to hit over 35 seconds on what I'm throwing at them, I'm like, okay, we're in a good spot. If they're failing under 30 on those, then I'm like, okay, we got to bring the grip up a little bit, but I don't really want to mess with their absolute strength. And if they're drilling the 60 seconds, I'm like, dude, we're good to go. But then like the guys who are like weaker coming into the preps, we'll get a bigger carryover off their absolute strength than we will anything else, because their absolute strength for a lot of these dudes, they don't realize is their limiting factor for the ruck. Mm-hmm. And so if I have a dude who has a 300-pound deadlift, those carries are going to feel heavy as hell. The ruck pack's going to feel heavy as hell. Like the stronger we get him, we're going to see a carryover, just because he already is quite the endurance athlete. But that's the hard selling part, where like you have to talk to them and be like, hey man, we can't chase the low hanging fruit here, because I'm not going to be that coach who over specifies and you go and fail, and me and you go, I don't know what happened. We were doing all the right stuff. We did the endurance stuff. And like, because that's an easy trap to fall into, to go when you're catering to the specificity so hard, and then they fall and you're like, well, we did, like you had the 3-mile run. We did the 3-mile run. You had the ruck. We did that. Like, I don't know what happened, but it's like, well, why do they suck at those things? You as the coach, you figure out what is going to carry over to those, not the specificity, but what the carryover is.
Obviously, rucking comes up really regularly in that context with special forces, anyone who's looking to deploy. But, you know, there's quite a lot of Josh Bryant, to some degree, has helped popularize this with individuals outside of these contexts, you know, whether it's getting fitter as a strongman or a powerlifter or whatever. In general, not just in the special forces, what is your advice for starting to ruck, and what it would be good practice for rucking for someone who is either maybe they're thinking about applying to deploy at some point, or wants to start including it as some form of GPP? What do you see done wrong, and how do you see what's good advice for building that up over time?
Perfect. Because so usually the dudes who want to get into Spec Ops have a high endurance background already, or very naturally good at it, because like me and you are never going to be like,
they wouldn't be there.
Well, no, we're never like, we're never going to be like, I want to go walk for 12 miles. Like at our, like, I don't know, what was the heaviest you were?
Ever?
Yeah.
230, 240.
Like maybe like you could have transferred that very well. Like I have some of my best ruckers are like, dude, I have some dudes 240 you could fucking blaze. Mm-hmm. And like, there's like that fine over 200 to like that 240 range. Like, so you could have transferred that, but like, at our like biggest fast food phase, like we weren't exactly like, I want to walk any further than to a platform. And so the thing is, like with the dudes who want to get into the field, a lot of the times they got to get fucking stronger. And so I swear to God, I'm answering your question, but those dudes, like usually you need to get stronger, and it's a durability factor because like you can't focus so hard on a pipeline that you're busted to shit after the pipeline. And that's where like there's an intelligent way to do all of the power, the hypertrophy, and the strongman to like work on the density versus the actual like traditional, because a lot of people, they like, that's the problem with like a lot of the like science stuff is it doesn't apply to athletes and operators of how you apply hypertrophy, or building resilient size is different than building stage size. And a lot of people mess that up because like it's easy to create the durability in a way that it carries over, because muscular endurance is a thing. So like when we're doing upper back and hamstring work, it's for the sake of the ruck and it's for the sake of carrying heavy shit far. So I'm looking at more like the knee health than I am like, how does their quad sweep look? And so that's the art of bodybuilding and sport and tactical. But so if somebody wants to get into rucking, it depends on their background. Like I think the best carryover you're going to get for rucking is sled walks, distance sled walks. We'll do that as off seasons for my guys to like save their backs, and we'll do waves of that. And that way you're getting all that ruck work on your hips without your spine, and we can save the spine. If somebody wants to get into it, it's a lot of time on feet. And so I would recommend just like grabbing chains, grabbing weight vests, grabbing like the ruck. Like, so I kind of wave the rucks like I would a lift on, like, we'll change where that load is. And so like, we'll do like the Zercher harness and do that with kettlebells or chains or like front loaded carry. So like that way, like you're feeling how to hold up my posture with the ruck. Because if you're like just wanting to ruck, like just get good at carrying stuff in a way that's like stimulating, because it gets old as shit just walking with a backpack. That's why you don't see operators rucking unless they have to. Like all my best ruckers, they're like, you know what we don't do? We don't ruck. Like, because guess what? Like we know how to do it, and it like wears down on you. So we'll do it in different ways. Like I'll do a lot of off-season ruck variations, if you will. Like we'll take the safety bar and we'll suspend kettlebells. And like, so you're having to hold your posture and walk for a mile with suspended kettlebells dropping on you. We'll do chain walks. Like, so I'm like front loading it heavy. It's pulling me forward and I have to stay up. We'll do different, kind of like Forrest Gump of rucking. We'll do weight vests. I rarely, unless somebody is just like, I want to get into rucking, with those guys, I do time on feet a lot, where it's just like, at first, I'm not concerned with your distance and your pace at all. I'm just concerned with like, how long can we keep posture on these like 30-minute walks progressing up to an hour. And once I'll keep track of this stuff. They don't need to, but I have them give me their distances so I can find trends and find when should we start focusing on pace? When should we start focusing on mileage and get away from the time on feet? Because it's all about time on feet. I think if you want to become a proficient rucker and you're like, okay, like this is something I might want to be good at down the line, it's just get good on your feet and don't really worry, like go hike, go do all this stuff and just get good at lugging stuff around. But that is something we do to stay ruck ready year round. And then again, like my guys, like they never fight me on shit. But if I was like, hey, we're going to go ruck, they'd be like, dude, fuck no. Like we do that deployed. Like, no, that's like telling, like with your operators, that's like telling like your best linebacker, like we're going to go live today. And you know, he can throw down in the game. He's like, I'd rather not. Probably won't. And so my best ruckers were avoiding it like plague, but I'm doing different things to keep them ruck ready year round, of like the safety bar walks, the chains, the sleds. They love the sleds and that's been like my guys who like drill the sleds in the ground. They said they noticed it the most on mountain terrains because it feels like walking uphill, but they're not burning up their knees trying to over specify it. And so the sleds, like if I have a team that's going on like a trip, or a dude, like the individuals I work with, if they have different TDYs coming up, we'll do a different wave of sled work where I'm waving it like it's their warm up every day. So that way they're used to, because when you look at a mission set, you ruck into a mission set, you don't run into a mission set. It can be up to like, you're talking double digit miles into a mission set. It can be 4-hour walk into a mission set. So that's the foreplay before the peripheral front. And for the guys, so like when we have those coming up, we'll do the sled walks before the lift. So they're used to like time on feet, then I'm going to go do this. Sure. And we'll sprinkle that throughout the week as their volume. So like I'll wave that up as we're doing the lifts, but they're just I'm always used to this feeling of walking with load and then going to do something.
Sure. You mentioned the importance of strength endurance there, and that it is a thing. Mm-hmm. So when you have someone, you mentioned like someone who's already at the gold standard for deadlift, say 600 pounds on a trap bar or whatever. At that point, is that when absolute strength becomes significantly less important to you, and then you start working on strength endurance? For example, if that person can pull 600 but can't pull 400 for 5 sets of 5, or they need like 5 minutes between sets to do that, would that become now your low-hanging fruit for the strength work, and that's what you focus on with that individual?
It's mostly like, so the muscular endurance part is mostly like the durability of the mission set for like what I look at, because most of the dudes in the Spec Ops, you'll never see somebody get too heavy on the absolute strength side just because it's such a foreign thing to them. Like, cause like, yeah, I totally see what you're saying on like the lifter side. On the Spec Ops side, like they're never going to get like a point where like we drop down to a 5x5 and it's crushing them. Like usually, just because you have to look at a lot of their day-to-day, they don't realize, and this is something you have to point out as a coach, is like how much second-hand endurance they're doing, because like a guy trains with me and then does some ops for 12 hours. You were under load. It's like, hey, bud, look at your Whoop band. Like, then see how much weight you dropped. Like, let's look at those metrics. Because again, like, why would I do HIIT before that? Like, low-hanging fruit. But so the things we look at for, I love that question, because like what I'll do for that on like with certain people is like we'll do time cap work on a 5x5 or a 3 rep. And what you can tell is if a guy is climbing and he gasses out on weight before he gasses out on the rest interval, we need to get stronger. If a guy gasses out on the rest intervals before the weight, so like if you're doing like a max effort triple and I make it up to, like, as a powerlifter, I like make it up to 60% because I'm like, these rest intervals are fucking kicking my ass. And the reason I can't go up is because of my conditioning. That's a really good way to look back and go like, do I need to get in shape to get stronger, or do I need to get stronger to get in better shape? So I'll do some of those metrics, and we'll do like a lot of our like assistance work we'll do on like intervals for like this many sets of 8 staying on this rest interval, and then I have ways to progress that for them based off of, if you got over this many sets, we need to go up in weight. Mm-hmm. If you like, so you can gauge it from there off of the how many sets were achieved.
Something that interests me, considering the variety of people that you work with. Right? I don't know what the average special ops guy weighs. I'm sure you can tell us, but I assume it's considerably less than the average competitive strongman, or say a linebacker. So when you're doing these types of trainings, when you have someone who's say like a 190, 5'10" or whatever, and then you've got someone who's 350 linebacker or whatever, everything's kind of different in terms of workload, recovery, just demand on the body. How do you tailor things up and down to take things like that into account when we're talking like big differences in body shape and physiques and so on?
That's kind of the interesting thing with like the body weights is like, so there's one dude, so first off, the best way they're going to get respect on a team is like to come in physically cultured. And so there is like, I think as an operator, like depending on their height, because that's the other thing too, is like with your controllers and different ground operators, like a lot of those dudes are shorter. And then a lot of your like pararescue dudes are taller. So you can tell a lot really quick by like who you're working with, and not always, but for the most part, it's going to be shorter and taller guys. At the end of the day, they all have to be able to do the same mission sets together. And so it's kind of easy to like structure it on, you guys are going to do the same mission set for the same duration, for the same time. And then like all of you are carrying heavy stuff. So it kind of answers itself in the training. And I think on the like strongman portion of it though, that's where like you challenge the guys on like, we have certain dudes who are going to be doing better on the intervals on heavier stuff, and then certain dudes who are going to be doing better on the like body weight stuff. And it's just all about not getting the guys too absolute where they lose relative, and not getting the guys too relative where they never get absolute.
Sure.
Tell me about your event.
So we run World's Strongest Operator, and We're coming up on year 5 of that, and we started that. My wife and I started that November of 2021. So the first strike team I ever worked with, first unit, first 2 strike teams. So Dylan Elchin was on Red Legion, and he was killed in action November of 2018. And that's kind of like, in athletics, you might have an ACL. That was exactly 3 months after I started with them. And so I was like, okay, we don't fucking have ACLs. Like, this dude was killed in action. And that was just like a really humbling experience as a coach coming into the setting where it's like, okay, holy shit, like, this is real, like, of like what these guys do. We're not throwing balls. And so his team I fell in love with, like, one of my favorite teams ever. Like, they train like linebackers every day, like big weight room dudes. And they were like some of those dudes, the culture was so strong. Like, when they were a different unit prior, like, they'd have like the lightest dude on the team, like, had to come in and write what he ate on the board every day and get fucking ransacked by the team. And so, like, they were meat eaters. Like, they were like, you know, Google gobble one of us, like, for meatheads. And so, like, I fell in love with them immediately. And the big thing was like seeing them handle it and seeing like that's a different facet. And you're like, from being an outsider, being welcomed in so much to this environment. Cause like the way Soft took me in and the way my teams took me in, like, it's the best dudes you'll ever work with. And like, I love all the athletes I've worked with, and I like love everybody I've worked with, but like having a dude who will go pick up, you're out of town, and go pick up your Texas power bar, deadlift bar that your wife just ordered you, that came because you're out of town and mistimed, and he'll leave his house at midnight, go pick it up for you on a Friday night. Like, you're not going to find that anywhere else. No questions asked. And like, so dudes like that who just like, they don't know any way but just to be the best dudes. My wife and I are like, we have to do something great for like not only this dude, but his team. And for the way that, because we started WSO in 2021, the way that our unit just really ran with how to train right and train the way that we know training looks like all of us at this table. And for them to really embrace that and do things in SOF as a unit that had never been done and never will be done as a unit, we were like, we have to keep this one. We have to remember Dylan in the strongest way possible and respect his team. And my favorite part every year is like hearing from his teammates who like, we try to do it right by them, and they're like, this is exactly how this should look. Because he didn't like running, he didn't like cardio, he liked lifting. He liked, if you talk to him, his teammates, it was lifting and spicy McChickens and like John Elway. And so I'm like, dude, fuck yeah, like, we all love those things. And also like to kind of respect, or very much so respect, the guys who are doing it right and like lifting, where like getting away from the traditional like stereotype of like CrossFit and stuff like that, and like keep growing this real style of training of strongman and true training in the Spec Ops setting. Because like the thing is, like, there's so many dudes doing it right and doing it cool. And like we started the female division, and that was a big, like, we could talk 6 hours for like what females are doing, and not only lifting right now, but in Spec Ops and in the military. Like, if I go to any base gym and I'm just like broing out at a base gym, if I need shit done, I'm going to call the 12 strongest females there, not the 12 strongest males, if I'm just at that base gym. Because like the way that girls are training right now is so fucking awesome. And the things that they're doing in that Spec Ops setting is incredible. So like that was important for us to grow that too, to highlight what they're doing. Cause like you want to see like some girls train hard, like they get after it. And so, yeah, we started that in 2021, and Josh Bryant, Kevin Yox were heavily involved. They were the first 2 phone calls I made, where I told them, hey, this is what we're doing, and we're growing it this year. We'll go from there. And both of them were like, no questions asked, in. We're all in. And them, and I'd be super kicking myself if I didn't mention Dan Clemens, Vanessa Jones, and then PV. Those were the Fab Five from day one on the event and growing it to what it's becoming and what it's growing into. And immediately, like the support for what we were doing was overwhelming from the competitors, supporters, and then also a lot of operators who I think very highly of who have retired and their old teams, and hearing from dudes who had jobbed it forever who are going, why the fuck is this the year one of doing this? Like, why have we not always been doing this? Was really cool to hear that, like, I'm not reinventing the wheel of culture of what these guys have built. I'm just trying to like add to it and give everything I can to what they have built and what they've welcomed me in on, and grow how. The other thing too about it is however we want to label it, but like Spec Ops, strongman, and like the training of it is very unique, because that was kind of a cool epiphany when Yox and Josh Bryant came out to it. It was also like, for me as a coach, like a feedback of like, how do these dudes looking? Because so every year we invite strongest operators in the world, hand select them. They're picked off of, strength. And also like, it's very important to us, the brotherhood of it and making sure that we grow that. Number one for Dylan, but also for everybody a part of that WSO family. And so we had dudes fly in, we ran it at Cannon Air Force Base, and back briefing with Yox and Josh, and they're like, dude, these dudes are in amazing shape for how strong they are, and their work capacity was insane, seeing how quick they recovered event to event and the events we did. And that was like really cool, where it's like, hey, I think very highly of what these two think about strength and conditioning, and this is a good soundboard for them to kick me the real deal of like, what do these dudes need to work on as well. And then so it outgrew really quick. We then grew it to Dallas, and that was kind of very unique it's growing in some events that like aren't really, we haven't done public yet, but they are going to be. So right away, a lot of people were all in that, like, we met by accident, kind of like a night at the Roxbury, like Emilio, like, so I'm meeting with MJ from Gasp, and like he's been all in from day one. And in the meeting, Branch Warren walks in, and like, if you're an early 2000s like lifter, like if that's when you came up, like it's like, dude, holy shit, like we're playing pickup ball and MJ walks in. And so he walked in the meeting, and I was like all right, like, just Branch, like, what's up, Branch? And I'm like, holy shit, because I didn't know he was going to be there. And so he was like, we talked about the event and what it means and all the like unique qualities to it that are different than other strength events in general. I mean, because also it's the only strongman event or strength event where it's like dudes who are dropping bombs. Like, it's so, take that other strongman and step it up. And so he was all in, and he was like, dude, like, I'm all about this. We had some good chats and like met and started like talking about how organically, like, it grew into other stuff in the future, but like we had some good chats about it. And then I'm meeting with him, and then Johnny Jackson walks in again, and like another like night at the Roxbury. I was like, holy shit, because like if you were hooked on deadlifting, like, that dude. And so both of them, like, I can't say enough good things about like how awesome they were in helping us grow the event and supporting it. And Johnny came out and judged at that year, and it was kind of funny because when I called him, I was just like, I didn't really know him quite well yet, just besides he wanted to be in on the event, like help support any way he can. And I was like, hey man, you gotta come make a guest appearance or whatever. And he like gets fucking mad, and he's like, dude, what? And I'm like, yeah, dude, just like show up, like shake some hands. He's like, fuck no. He's like, I'm gonna come load weights or do anything to be involved, because nobody's gonna talk to me if I just show up. But he's like, if I'm loading weights and doing stuff, then the competitors are gonna talk to me, and I can hang out with them. And I was like, holy shit, like that's a real deal when a dude like would rather come be a weight loader than be a guest appearance. So that just grew from there. And so every year since then, that whole family's been involved. Like, we got Yox, Josh Bryant, Tony Cook, Josh Daniel. Like, I'm gonna forget a lot of people because there's so many people that make that event work. Branch Warren, Johnny Jackson, MJ, and like there's so many people that have helped that event, and Mikey B, and like it kind of feels funny being at the front of it, because like I just show up and there's so many people that make that event what it is. And the competitors are all family. PV, he put it best. He's like, downrange strength is a cult and a street gang, and WSO is a family. And like the way that everybody comes to that event and walks away and they're all close after the event, and like makes everything worth it, because anybody who runs events knows what goes into it on. And especially if there's red, us on that event running it is like red as the devil's ass. Like we couldn't get any redder. And we do that on purpose, because it's like, it's not about, that thing is a family thing. It's not anything having to do with business. That was a passion project and always will be. And so it's completely separate. That way we can make sure it's perfect every year and ran exactly how it should be for the guys.
How can people find out more about downrange strength?
My only traps account, MySpace. So on Instagram, downrange strength, and then world's strongest operator. Those are our two main accounts for our training and our events. And then, just train your neck and train your grip.
Was there anything that you wanted to talk about we didn't bring up?
My notepad's over there, but anybody that knows me knows I'm like more of a winged guy. But some of the unique points because I think it can't be emphasized enough, is the bodybuilding in the tactical setting. There were some really unique points my guys brought up of the operators and pilots on like how that physical culture will immediately get you buy-in at a table. And so like if you're a pilot or an officer or a young guy, the quickest way you're going to get respect of the team, because a lot of times like when you're in Spec Ops, it's all joint force stuff, and you're not working Air Force on Air Force, Army on Army. You're always collaborating with other teams and units. And so it's automatically an eyeball test. And so my pilots and officers, especially because those are the ones you don't expect to be jacked, they said like helping advance their career at the forefront has been size and the capabilities of doing everything, but looking the part. Because when you're sitting at the table with everybody, they're like, you'll sit in a meeting and watch ODA, look over and like look at the dude he's about to eat alive because he has bad posture and a pencil neck, and he'll talk different to this guy than he will this guy who clearly is a lifter. And like they're like, that needs to be implemented by every officer and pilot. And then a funny story like about physical culture, because that's the cool thing, is people who get it on when you have numbers behind your name or size to your frame. That sounded cool. But because like, so whenever I meet somebody, like I'm introduced to a lot of cool people. And what's funny is like Josh, like whenever he introduces me to somebody, because he's one of those people who like all like travel and meet different coaches and lifters, he always like puts your deadlift, or he'll always, that's his way of, when I introduce him to somebody, he'll like, what's their numbers? And like, it's like his way of, he's like, or like, how in are we on this dude? And so it's the same with Spec Ops and whatnot. And like those masculine environments, if you will, or hardcore environments, because there's a lot of females there. When you have that size coming into, I had a guy who I had mentioned him before. He was lowest rank coming in the unit, and our commander, who was like big in on the weight room, he comes up to me because like we had that commander in chief and DO, I had a super close relationship, and like they were awesome dudes to work with, and they helped lay the foundation for everything we're doing. And he pulls me aside, and this younger dude who got the fuck after in the weight room, he hasn't done any deployments, he's pretty new to the unit, and he's like, pulls me aside, he's like, I just promoted this guy, he doesn't know yet, nobody knows. He's like, don't tell anybody. He's like, he hasn't done anything, but I know in the weight room he's gonna do something really cool, and he's gonna be a great asset. He's like, so we're promoting him. And it was kind of cool because like a lot of people don't see, there's nowhere else that you can get a view of all that besides the weight room, of somebody's consistency and like who's good at being bored and getting results just off coming in working.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I want to thank you for coming out. This has been a great time, and we're done. Yeah, Pete. All content you see on this channel and at elitefts.com is created by, take a guess, Elite FTS. If you want to help support the content, head over to elitefts.com and pick up literally anything that you need to be able to get more jacked and strong.